Hi, hello, welcome back to the final edition of 805 Sports Talk for 2017. And it has been another great sports year. I'm Elliot Stern along with Kenny Kress, Lorenzo Reyna. Joe Bailey has a couple days off, so he's not joining us today. But we're going to take a look at some of the recent things that have been going on last week and maybe talk about a few of the best stories from 2017 as we wrap up the year in local sports. So let's start off with it is Christmas and New Year week, which means basketball tournament time. And there's been a lot of them, even with earlier tournaments being postponed or canceled by the Thomas Fire. A lot of games have been getting in, and now things are getting back to normal. So we have tournaments going on all this week on both the high school and the college level with Hancock College. So let's get right into it with the Rigetti girls hosting a tournament with St. Joe last week, sort of a make-up thing that they put together because of the cancellations of the Thomas Fire. It was really interesting, and I was interested to see how Rigetti played because they hadn't had a lot of games under their belt, and it looks like Desiree Hitch has got the girls heading in the right direction. What do you guys think, Kenny?
Well, for starters, I think St. Joseph coach Ed Torres and Desiree did a really good job putting together that tournament. They were both slated to play in the Tournament of Champions but of course that horrible Thomas Fire, which I'm not sure it's the second largest or the largest.
It's the largest.
That's what I thought
Yeah.
now. The largest fire in Southern California history wiped that out, and both Rigetti and St. Joseph were scheduled to play there. So Desiree and Ed made some calls. They put the tournament together. I do think the tournament was very encouraging for Rigetti. They scored no less than 60 points, I think, in any of the tournament games. I thought a particularly big win for them was their 60-54 win over Hanford-based Sierra Pacific. Sierra Pacific, a Central Section team like Rigetti, did make it into the state tournament last year. In fact, Sierra Pacific made it all the way to the Southern California Regional Final. I think Rigetti had an instructive lesson. They had 32-18 lead at halftime. But Sierra Pacific, like Rigetti, is a very well-coached team. Sierra Pacific's made some adjustments, broke Rigetti's press regularly in the second half, but though Sierra Pacific's defense really did a good job of closing off good angles, Rigetti was able to get to the line. They shot 24 free throws, made 15, and once again they found a way to win. It might be instructive for them, though. Sierra Pacific broke that press of Rigetti's pretty regularly in the second half, and I know Desiree loves to press full time, but once they get, they pretty much seem a lock to make the playoffs, and if they do, they might have to rethink that press if a really good team is breaking it in the playoffs.
So now, Lompoc and St. Joe had up and down performances at that same tournament. What do you think? Early season, shakedown cruise, or is this a sign of things to come?
No, I think it was really rust. And Claudia Tarona's Lompoc High girls basketball coach, she was up front and said, you know what, we had 3 weeks off because of the Thomas Fire, and her biggest concern was how rusty her team was. And sure enough, I mean, they had a hard time getting things going right away against Cupertino, and it was the same against St. Joseph and against her former coach, her former boss Ed Torres as well. But I feel like that Lompoc still potentially can make a playoff run. They may not be as talented as last year's team. I mean, you only have one senior now, Danielle Morgan, as we know, but there is a fast riser in Maya Mendoza who had I think a terrific tournament. She's only a freshman, and she's being called on to do a lot more with the offense, especially with controlling the tempo and basically playing point guard. But I think I wouldn't rule out Lompoc down the road. I think just like any other team in this area, there was that long layover because of the Thomas fire, and it affected Lompoc. It affected St. Joseph as well. But credit. I do want to give credit to Rigetti and St. Joseph for working this tournament out and making sure that they still had something to do. They still prevented themselves from waiting until league play to get their season back on track. And hey, it gave us something to do as well.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It was a good tournament.
Now, so they're getting back on track, and part of that is the annual Harold Oliveira Classic this week, and we're going to see right away Rigetti and Cabrillo in a rematch. Cabrillo won the first time around in one of those makeup games from the Thomas fire. Do you think Rigetti has got a little bit of momentum, or they're going to turn it around now?
I think Rigetti has the momentum on his side because in regards to Cabrillo, you keep in mind they won't have Brittany McCune. And it was actually in the last meeting, Cabrillo had Brittany McCune for most of the game before she went down with that horrible knee injury. So there's already that advantage that Rigetti has. I would imagine that Desiree's going to feed the ball inside to either Zane or whoever else is one of their top post options, and they're going to test Cabrillo down low in this game from what I would envision. But Cabrillo is a very feisty defensive team too, so I'll be curious to see what Jared McCune pulls out this time, knowing that Desiree already seen what Cabrillo brought the first meeting around. But this is definitely one of the more intriguing matchups in this tournament.
It is. I'm thinking the loss of McCune is going to hurt them greatly, though, and Rigetti is now getting its sea legs under them, and I think they're starting to head in the right direction. What do you think, Kenny? This is going to be a good tournament.
I think it will be against Rigetti anyway. I just think the loss of Brittany McCune will be too much to overcome. But for starters, Rigetti has two real strong options down low in the post with Zane Checkard and Ashley Reynoso. And Brittany obviously could maybe gone head to head against one of them, but I'm not sure how they will deal with two against. Well, I get two with the loss of Brittany, and Rigetti's guards are good at throwing the high entry pass and getting the ball in to those post players. So I just think it will be very problematic for Cabrillo without Brittany.
I feel like Rigetti Cabrillo is our version of Tennessee, Connecticut. The more I think about it.
This is basketball, not football, because
Yeah.
Tennessee would still kill UConn in football. All right, so now that's something about the girls. The boys are also playing, and Santa Maria is going to fill up its Wilson Gym with a boys basketball tournament. And not only the host team, the Saints, but Lompoc, Pioneer Valley, they're playing in it. We're going to be covering that extensively. Lorenzo, you've already seen the first game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know what? I find myself more impressed with Lompoc than I was with Pioneer Valley. I mean, the effort, the energy, it's starting to come into play for Paul Terrones. And keep in mind, he not only had to deal with the long layover with the Thomas Fire, but there was this benefit. He had his majority of his lineup is football players. And so, I mean, it takes like at least 2 weeks or even a month to get your basketball legs in shape. And now because of the fire and because of the fact that the guys have already been well rested from the football season, now I'm starting to see everything come into place for Paul Terrones in this group, because Pioneer Valley could have very easily blown this game out, but there was just so many costly mistakes, from the turnovers to lack of communication, and Lompoc very could have easily sent this game into overtime, and I would have been stuck at Santa Maria, and maybe the show gets delayed. But I mean, I was very pleased with what Paul Terrones is starting to do over there.
Sounded from the comments that Pioneer Valley coach Greg Lanthier was also more impressed with Lompoc than he was.
Yeah, he was. He was not
Pioneer
pleased with his
Valley.
performance.
Well, that tournament will continue, and you're heading over there right after we're done here.
Right.
So we'll have tournament play right up to the end of the week, and then everybody has a long weekend. School starts back up, and with it will be the beginning of league play. So have we seen enough because of the shortened preseason to be able to predict? We've done previews on all these teams. We kind of know what to expect, but now that they're actually playing, what have we seen? What do we expect from league play?
Well, keep in mind that there's teams that are still waiting on some of their transfers, and they officially will be in the lineup by January the 2nd. Jordan Tyler is one of those guys who was the top big man from Cabrillo. Now he's going to be Paul Tyrone as his top big man at Lompoc. You also have Olsen at Cabrillo, who's expected to make his debut pretty soon under C.J. Simmons. So I'll be curious to see how he adjusts playing alongside Leandrew Knight. But, I think with Rigetti girls basketball, yeah, I feel like last year's team was a lot more experienced, and Desiree admitted that, but they still look to be a force in the Pac-8.
Yeah, how do you see them shaping up?
Rigetti's girls?
Or
In
the
the
league,
whole
just
league?
the whole
It is hard to say. Because I haven't seen most of the teams. Atascadero had a hard time in the Rigetti St. Joseph tournament. Atascadero lost to St. Inez, which is a good team in the Los Padres League, but the Los Padres League is a smaller league. I thought San Luis Obispo gave a pretty good account of itself, and San Luis Obispo won its first 7 games of the season, and they were competitive against Sierra Pacific. I think Arroyo Grande looks fairly solid. I don't see any what I would call disappointments really on either the boys or girls sides. Pioneer Valley actually looks. Though Greg obviously wasn't pleased with their win last, they look pretty solid. They beat a pretty decent Santa Maria team 67-54 in the Santa Maria tourney. I think the teams, they seem to have pretty much the same characteristics as they always have. I think Lompoc's boys will really be on the rise, particularly when Jordan Tyler gets eligible to play. I think Pioneer Valley's boys' fortunes, I think they're actually on the rise. I think they're actually better. I have a feeling it's going to be the same suspects as there were last year, pretty much, as far as the top of the league.
Something tells me that when I spoke with Greg Linfier, he thinks that his Pioneer Valley team can easily win by a considerable margin against these LPL teams. So maybe it's lapses in effort. Obviously I don't always get a chance to see Pioneer Valley, but maybe it's lapses in effort as what he's referring to. But there is some core pieces. I was actually impressed with how big Pioneer Valley is size-wise, especially underneath.
Greg really likes his team's size this year. I think they might be his best good size-wise as they've ever been.
And there's one other thing too besides the high schools. Hancock has its annual holiday tournament. Beginning Thursday.
28th through the 30th, yeah.
And they'll have some fun games over there. 4 games, each day? First day, I guess that as you lose, there'll be 3 games.
4 games the first 2 days, and then 3 games
3
on
games
Saturday,
for the championship, 3rd place and 5th place.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, as we count down to the new year, one of our annual traditions is to come up with the top 10 stories of the year. And there's really so much that goes on, not every story can make it in the top 10. We have an honorable mention, that story that just mentions all the ones that didn't get voted, but we voted ourselves, and we've already counted down pretty much the first half of them. The number 6 story will run in tomorrow's times, but we've got Santa Maria soccer, Hancock football, San Inez softball, and Rigetti baseball have already been some of the top teams in the countdown, and we're not going to give away what number 1 is. You're going to have to wait until Sunday, December 31st to kind of ring in the new year with us on the final 2 teams or the 2 stories in the top 10. But what do you think so far about how the top 10's been counted down?
I think it's definitely been very accurate. Granted, I'm with you that we've had a lot going on this year, and it's hard to condense which one's which, but I think just looking at the list, and I won't give away who's number 1, who's number 2, or any of that, but I think it's very accurate from what we ran just recently, Righetti's baseball run. I mean, that's definitely a top 10 story. And then the story I did, Sandy and Ned's softball going on that miraculous Division 7 run, especially with what they went through the previous 2 years with going 0-38. So those are definitely stories worth mentioning as end of the year types.
Yeah, that was a great story, a great turnaround with a freshman pitcher, and coming from no wins to a league championship.
And only one senior.
Yeah, that's right. And the first baseman that her sister was the freshman pitcher. It was a great year for Coach Gills over there at St. Inez. The Santa Maria soccer team made a run. That was a fun run to cover. And I think they deserve to be there. Hancock's football, they got their first Pacific League championship, first outright league title in 20 years. So I mean, it was a great year sports-wise, and we're going to continue counting it down through New Year's Eve, because we don't have a Monday paper for New Year's Day, so we're going to kind of stack them up there on that final weekend to make sure everybody gets their coverage, get the way it's voted, and we were pretty well. All pretty close to each other in our consensus. I think it was unanimous of what our number one was and our number two was, and there was not a whole lot of disagreement the rest of the way through the top 10. There have been other years
pretty uniform.
that we've gone back and forth and argued like crazy, but this year, you know, if somebody had won one more game and came home with the championship, then they would have moved way up the list. But making it to the semifinals, to the finals, in playoffs, there were remarkable achievements by the young men and women on the Central Coast.
This was at least as robust a year as far as playoff runs by Central Coast teams that I can remember, really, and I've been here since 2000. I was very pleasantly surprised, actually, to be honest, at how robust the football playoff runs were. To be honest, I didn't see anybody making it past the quarterfinals before the season started.
I'll tell you one school that had such a miraculous year, and 2017 is going to go down as a year to remember for this school, Santa Maria High.
Yeah.
I mean, baseball, that run, cross country winning its first league title from what I understand in program history, football covering that run and covering that title game, even though it was a loss, it was a lot of fun just seeing how overly packed that stadium was. But I mean, and you know, I will say this, moving into next year, I would keep a close eye on Santa Maria High softball. They actually had a very respectable year this past season. They even beat Lompoc pretty handily 10-0, a Lompoc team that obviously was a defending 2016 CIF champion and still made the playoffs. So, you know, there might be something good going over there. So you might have that one program at Santa Maria High who could legitimately make a deep run.
Santa Maria High School has really turned it around in the last couple of years, and you have to be proud of all those kids and the programs and the support that the school and the coaches are getting and the parents. It's really been a great run, and we've said many a time that if they could get coaches and keep the coaches and get some consistency, it could turn things around, and we're seeing that it is possible. Righetti's football team turned it around this year. Lompoc is always good in football, so you come to expect that. But we've seen things. The two 8-man teams had great years. Righetti had a huge rebound. Santa Maria had a dream season. It was a fun football season. Everybody was playing lights out. There were only a couple teams that had really poor years, and they were up in San Luis Obispo County, not in our direct coverage area. So the ones that we focus on week in and week out were just fun to go to see, and there were a lot of close games. Yes, there were parents that complained about some of the blowouts, but if you look at it, there were a lot of highly competitive games, and it transferred to all the sports. And I mean, there was good water polo to watch, there's good golf, cross country, tennis again. Laurie Hollister, more powerhouse tennis from Arroyo Grande. So it's been a fun 2017, and of course the way it works is the year is almost over, but the school year is nowhere near over. We're only about halfway through the school year, so some of these teams that we're talking about right now, the basketball, the soccer, the girls water polo, those will continue right on into the end of the winter and early spring. So there's a lot for us to be covering, and we will be covering all of that, starting with the basketball tournaments that wrap up this week, then the weekend off for New Year's, and then everybody's in league play next week, and we'll be back at it with all of the kids and the young men and women at Hancock College. And we hope you'll join us in the newspaper and online to keep up with all of it and get out to the games. These are really entertaining games. They're fun to go to, and even if you don't have a rooting interest, it's just fun. And you don't have the same kind of things. You know, we've got the New York Jets. One of the guys being called a cancer in his locker room. You don't get that. This is fun, and the kids enjoy playing, and they enjoy the competition, and they enjoy the people they're playing against. And it's the attitude is so much different. This is what sports really meant to be, I think. And we have a good time covering it, and we hope you have a good time following it in the Times online and in print. But that's really going to do it for us for 2017. We'll see you again next week for the first show of the new year. And so thank you for being with us. Happy New Year, everyone. And we'll see you again next week. Join us online and in print at the Santa Maria Times.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.